Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second retro for the Kubernetes 133 release. My name is Kat Cosgrove. I will be your host. And like all Kubernetes meetings, we have to comply with the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, which means be nice to each other. So please do be nice. Remember that this is also being recorded and will be posted on YouTube. So consider what you want to exist online for potentially ever. Can I get a volunteer to take notes during this meeting? As always, if nobody volunteers, I will pick somebody.
I can take notes.
Okay, thank you. All right. So end of part one, we'll start with what went well in 133. First up is Nina.
Yeah, so I think everyone did an amazing job across all teams. Like we had an increase in workload. 64 enhancements is up from
Huge.
my previous releases, and I think that affected all teams, like in terms of tracking, the number of blogs that went out, the number of docs that had to be handled. So everyone did amazing across the board, and good job keeping up with the increase in workload this release.
Yeah, I agree. Great job from everybody. No notes. Does anybody have any comments or additions to that one? Okie dokie. Next up, Mateo.
So I would like to thank my fellow BM people. I think only Jeremy is here today for the blameless retrospective that we did async on a couple of things that needed to be changed. So I felt very safe in even doing a mistake, which is great. And yeah, that's just it. It was a great experience overall.
Yep, good job. Everybody makes mistakes. Stuff goes wrong. It's important to not be crappy about it when something goes wrong. Any comments on that one? Okay, this is going to be a fast retro, I think. All right, where is part two on this one? Here we go. I think
Yeah.
this is both of us because I had one on here in a
Yep.
different section on exactly that, but you go ahead.
Yeah, I think maybe this was actually initially written by someone else as well. But basically,
That is me, yeah.
yeah, do you want to start or
Sure. So like
yeah.
some of this has already been addressed in a SIG release meeting. We are going to handle it, but um, yeah, a CAP was merged into 133 without being tracked by the enhancements team. It did have user-facing changes that like ultimately only didn't require documentation because the documentation that did exist was super vague. So you could justifiably say that it still applied, but it was still user-facing changes. Um, wasn't discovered until well after code freeze, and their justification for getting away with that was that they had done it before, which is unacceptable. So we are going to. I asked somebody from SIG Instrumentation to be here. It doesn't seem that they are. So I will be showing up at their meeting to discuss this with them, but also we're going to send out an email reminder to all SIGs that even if you are not graduating to a new phase, if you have user-facing changes, that needs to be tracked. And potentially it needs to be a second alpha or a second beta, in my opinion, but it certainly, without a doubt, needs to be tracked by the enhancements team if it's got user-facing changes, IMO. So, Nina and Vyom,
Yes. So as that part, like I think we need like one action item where like maybe you can own a cat to like
yeah,
follow through with that email and like make sure like SIG instrumentation, all the SIGs are aware of this requirement because yeah, I think there's some things we can do on the release team side, but it is like a communication issue too where they're just because they've done it in the past, they think it's okay. So
yeah. Go ahead
but
and
yeah,
assign me an action item.
yes, I'll add you. And then my point was kind of related. So one of the things that I think Dipesh actually had started on in improving the enhancements guide is adding a task for the enhancements team to run a query to see what's like merged between cycles and check with the authors if there were any user-facing changes. Ideally, again, the SIG would communicate this, but like I want to maybe have some guardrails on the release team side to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So I'm open to suggestions on how to actually structure that. And I think Viom brought up another point there if you want to bring it up.
Yeah, the point with automating that is a KEP isn't linked directly to GitHub KKPR using structured metadata. So that portion is missing. We cannot analyze the content of a PR description to relate it back. Going through everything that merged between the cycle and trying to manually relate it with the KEP is something that can be done, but of course, this would increase the workload on the enhancements lead.
I think that's too much work.
Yeah, exactly. So do we want to find a way to relate, to add the metadata? Again, the problem with metadata is that it is on the person who is filling the PR description to add that metadata or to not add that metadata. We cannot basically clearly find a way in which we can say, oh, this change, it belongs to a KEP, and you have not added this portion of metadata in the PR description that this is not related to a KEP. And if they don't add it, again, this can be missed because the enhancement lead won't manually go over everything that would be merged. So some way to structure it, again, this is similar to what we do for whether this PR has user-facing changes. If the PR author adds that, we add that to the release notes. If the PR author doesn't add that, and even if there are user-facing changes, then they would get missed. So I think we should add some structured field. Is this related to a KEP? And if yes, then which KEP? But then this would require a lot of changes.
Yeah, that requires a lot of work. And we already have a pretty significant backlog of changes we need to make that require some degree of engineering work without enough resources to achieve them all in a reasonable amount of time, I think. I think that's not a bad suggestion, and we can table that for later to see if that is doable. We should look into it, but I want to prioritize making the other SIGs understand where the line is with things that need to be tracked, because I doubt SIG instrumentation is the only one doing this. I'm sure somebody else has pulled a similar stunt and we didn't catch it.
Yeah, exactly. And this can happen in the future as well.
Yeah.
Bed leads changing for some text, and then we won't be able to catch it in the future as well. So some way to enforce this rule.
I guess let's assign an action item to look into whether or not this is possible with our current resources.
Okay, that sounds fair.
Yeah, anyone from enhancements want to chime in here as well? Maybe Jenny, or sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Sorry, what was the question?
So like the idea of adding guardrails as part of the enhancements team responsibility, either like having that, automated or a manual process. Like, do you have any ideas on how to make sure we don't like let user-facing code merge in between cycles?
Yeah, not off the top of my head. Like, yeah, I agree it would be too much work to like go through each PR manually.
Yeah, we're trying to do less things manually and more things with automation. So
yeah, I have to think about it some more.
okay.
So
All right, any other comments on that one?
Just one quick one. The discussion point here is about the change in KK without a KEP tracking it. But there was another one that was raised for SIG release, the release highlights, and that was about a bug fix. And it ended up that they could kind of put into kind of reason about it in a way that that's related to some other KEP. How should we go about the bug fixes that are really not tracked as an enhancement, but it still goes in as a part of the release? Is it something that we need to have a grasp of?
if it's a bug fix, that's not a release highlight. So you just at that point refuse to give them a release highlight for it because it's a bug fix. If it's a release highlight, it should be a net new KEP, or it should be a significant improvement to an existing KEP. And a bug fix is not that. If the bug fix was significant enough to be considered an improvement to a KEP that warranted a release highlight, then it should be tracked. So
That's fair.
yeah, IMO. I don't expect that one to come up very often. So we'll handle those as they are. But that was the bug fix that Patrick requested as a release highlight, right?
I can't remember, but I think it was part of the few other changes, and it was
Okay.
was it about SIG node? I can't remember, but yeah, there were a few,
Well,
and
Jordan
it
is
ended
here,
up.
so if it was Node, Jordan would know.
Let me just double check what it was.
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, bug fixes can absolutely go into release notes. Like,
Oh yeah, they should be in the release
required
notes.
things, like totally fair there, but like release highlights,
Not a highlight. Yeah, no, absolutely not. Okay.
Maybe so. It might have been just confusion about like what channel are we using to tell a user about the thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree.
Okay. Anything else on this one? Cool. Next up is Ryota.
Sorry, which one is this? Oh yeah, the deadlines had some. I think that some of the most of the deadlines have some timestamp about 1 a.m. UTC or something like that for like code freeze. But for release highlights and a few other things, what just didn't have any of the timestamp mentioned. So it was very unclear to the blog authors saying, okay, what timeline it is. So we just probably need to clarify that in the timeline SIG release document. And if we can just have it all across, that would probably help. And yeah, I think it was about the. Go ahead.
With things that aren't sensitive, like the release highlights, I think generally we do like end of day anywhere on those, but also y'all do have the power to set explicit time zone requirements on these. If you want the release highlights deadline to be 5 p.m. UTC or 5 p.m. Pacific, you are absolutely well within your power to do that. You don't need to ask permission for it. I think for my release, I did set time zone deadlines for a lot of things that we didn't generally before that. It's entirely up to you. That's up to the sub team lead and the release lead. So feel free.
I personally felt that it would be easier for anyone to go check out the SIG release doc for the V133 or 34, and you can clearly see what day is the deadline. And we tend to, especially for the comms side of things, we tend to put the links for the actual SIG release document about the release, and if it's aligned to say, okay, timestamp of UTC 1 a.m. or whatever, I think that just makes it easier to communicate. So
Sure,
that's what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that. Like when the release schedule is being set at the beginning of the cycle, just when the PR is open for comment, just add a time zone, go for it. Grace, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think maybe this is just a note for VM to start doing that, because I think usually when the leads create the timeline, they just copy whatever the previous lead is doing. So if he could start doing that, then probably the later releases will also have timestamp.
Yeah. All right. Any more comments on that one?
I think there's a +1 from Wendy.
Yeah. Wendy's not here, I think. Yeah, she's not. That's okay. But yeah, +1, valid. So we'll make sure that gets done moving forward. Next one is also yours, Ryota.
Yeah, this is just something that I noticed only after the timeline was set. But the feature blog deadline took place before the docs deadline, and it meant that a few blogs didn't make the deadline, and it was just late by maybe a day or two. because they wanted to make sure that the docs are in place because that's mandatory. For the
Yep.
blogs, it is not, and for that reason, there were a few kind of really late submission about the blog submission. So just wanted to make sure that I think it would make sense for the docs to come on the same day rather than feature blogs being one day before. It was actually one day before, so it could be on the same day for both blogs and docs, or potentially blog to be just one day or 2 days later. It could be just a slight adjustments, but I think it would allow people to have more time to actually think about how to communicate to the community using blog as a part of the release. So maybe that would increase the actual volume that we need to commerce need to track. But at the same time, I think it would be nice for the community to actually see a blog for many caps. So that's what I thought that would be nice to adjust.
Okay. Valid. I think I would vote for putting the blog deadline after the docs deadline, because putting them on the same day is still people are still gonna prioritize docs, and blogs are still gonna be late if they're on the same day. So I personally would vote for putting the blog deadline like 2 days after the docs deadline, especially since we've got more flexibility with blog deadlines. I don't know. Any other opinions on that one?
I like it. I think that makes sense.
I would just say that maybe you can just add it in the release comms handbook to note that this deadline has to be X days after the docs. So it's easier to just have it for the next release lead, for the comms lead.
Fair enough.
That sounds like an action item.
Sure does.
Ryota,
I
are you
have
good
so
owning
I
that,
have so much.
or-
Well, I have so
Yeah,
much
that's
about
a-
the handbook change, so I would definitely track it. You can assign me, but there is
Okay.
so much that there are so many more items that are around the comms side. So yeah, we'll surely track that.
Perfect.
Okay.
Anything else on this one?
Sounds like no. Over to you, Nina.
Yeah, so this one, I think if anyone from the doc side is here, I'd also love to hear your opinion. But when I was release notes lead, I think the final release notes is a very manual process that's a little stressful in the last week, because you basically have to read through the whole doc. So if people have ideas on how to automate this, or maybe break it up and delegate parts of it, or automate I think this is like something that's a little painful in our process currently, and completely manual in terms of the reviews and the docs lead having to create that PR.
Yeah. So to add to that, this time, I mean, every release we have to wait for the last batch release notes, and then we have to start going through going through the final draft. But yeah, I mean, it's a bit painful, which can be. I'm not sure if it can be automated, but we can look into it once. So.
Vyom, your related thing with automating the branch sync PRs for docs. Yeah, that one is not happening, unfortunately. That did get shelved because of SIG docs. It's just not something that they decided was doable. The branch syncs have gotten less painful. Part of that was motivated by a problem we were having with Easy CLA, unrelated to the current problem we're having with Easy CLA with Tim's deleted account. But we got Easy CLA to fix that problem. The automation was something we were looking into because at the time we were having to do like 2 or 3 branch syncs a week because Easy CLA would barf at more than X number, like 300 commits or something. But they fixed that, so it's not painful anymore. Any more comments on potentially automating some of the release notes process? Okie doke. Rita, back to you.
Yeah, this is should be a quick action item for the handbook. Feature blog, when we request or ask all the KEPs owners or authors about the feature blogs, we just say, okay, create an empty pull request. Doesn't have to have anything. Just create a pull request. That's the only requirement that we communicated to them. But I think it would make sense to have some of the flags, some of the front matters for the markdowns, so that it would be easier for the comms to track it later. So that includes the draft flag and also the prefix of the block title being Kubernetes 133 or 34, whichever version. So I think those were the things that we didn't really catch, and then we're actually having a discussion with the SIG docs about how to handle the front matter in the future. So yeah, just a quick action item that I wanted to share here.
I agree. That is a great thing to put in the handbook. Do you want that action item?
Absolutely.
All right. It's all yours then. Any comments on that one? Sweet. Next one is from Wendy, who's not here. Quick question for the EA or CAT. According to the EA handbook, yada, 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 shadow survey and self-evaluation form for role leads. Yes, there are two surveys focused on shadows only. An evaluation form for sub-team leads would be really useful. Yeah, we can do that. I don't see a problem with a self-eval form for sub-team leads. You know what? Actually, I think what I would prefer is a survey for the release lead to evaluate the sub-team leads. Or we include it at the end of cycle survey that goes out to sub-team leads to evaluate their shadows. But I don't have a problem with that. We can try it this cycle and see if people actually fill it out. I will note that most shadows don't fill out the surveys. We get like 3 shadows filling out those surveys at best, unfortunately. Does anybody have any thoughts on doing that? We think it's valuable. Do you think people will actually fill it out?
Sorry, could you repeat that? This is for the.
This is for a self-evaluation form for sub-team leads, either them evaluating themselves or sending a survey to the release lead to evaluate the sub-team leads.
I think the current shadow form actually has like self-evaluating questions. I think we ask how they think
It doesn't go out to the sub-team leads though.
the sub-team lead.
Yeah, so like the comms lead doesn't get the mid-cycle shadow survey.
Yep.
I see. Yeah, I think right now it's more informal, where we reach out to them and ask them how they think the release is going, right?
Yeah, that's all it is for the shadows, but the sub-team leads don't get a survey like that at all. So do we think they should?
I'm a little bit hesitant to like throw more forms at the problem.
Yeah, I'm not sure that people will actually fill this out. Like,
But like rest assured that the release lead and the sub-team leads are syncing, like, very often.
yeah. Okay, we can just not do this. The EA handbook does need to be revised. Now that the release team has sub-project leads, a lot of the responsibility that used to sit with the emeritus advisor is now on the sub-project lead. So yes, the EA handbook needs a little bit more work. I have been doing that.
So if we want more people to submit suggest like self-evaluations, what if we had in this shadow application a space, like if you had been a shadow before, you evaluate how you think you did? Or is that just like going to be harder to keep track of because it's coming from different places?
That's just going to be harder to keep track of. And the shadow application form already asks if you've been on the release team before, and asks like what experience you have within the project. And most people do use that to talk about their previous shadow experience. So like we're already kind of getting some of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What do we want to get out of this So sub-team, so the release lead evaluating the sub-team leads. What do we want to get out of this? Picking the next lead shadows?
Maybe, but like everybody, once you're leading a sub team, you're already so involved in the release and
Yeah.
involved with potential other release leads that I don't know that that's super helpful. Grace, your hands up.
I think what I'm hearing from this feedback is that, folks might want more feedback on how they're doing. And if that is the case, then I think they should feel empowered to reach out directly.
Okay. All right, next one is also Wendy. All right. This is about having an APAC friendly retro. Look, I would love to be able to have the exact same meetings across all time zones available for all people. But the thing with the retros is that it requires people in leadership positions and decision-making positions from SIG release and multiple SIGs in order to have a discussion about a retro item, assign any action items. And it's simply not possible to do that for all time zones. If we have an APAC retro, we won't have leadership or people with decision-making capabilities from as many SIGs as we can get here. So we won't be able to assign any action items. We did discuss having like a retro follow-up in an APAC time zone, but that is functionally just going to be somebody showing up to read the doc from the actual retro, because we, again, won't be able to assign any action items in a retro that doesn't have decision makers from SIG release in it. So I don't think that this is fixable. I'm happy to one time host a retro follow-up that is just me sitting in a meeting at probably 5:30 in the morning, my time, reading this doc, but I really question the usefulness of that. Like I don't love it. I wish we could, but they're just simply aren't the people for it. All we can really do is ask that folks make sure that they put their items in the retro doc and they get discussed at the retro time, as it is. Like Wendy's items being discussed even though she's not here. Like that's all we can really do.
On that, like publicizing that people can contribute async ahead of the retro. Like if there were friction points you bumped into, like please put them here. And if you can't attend the meeting, please make sure you include enough detail that we can like take into account your feedback during the retro, because we absolutely
I mean, we regularly do that throughout the cycle. As soon as it starts getting close to a retro, there are constant reminders to put stuff in the retro doc. And like I have historically put stuff in the retro doc and then not been able to show up for the meeting, even if it is in a time zone that's convenient for me. So that's kind of just like a how this works thing. So the
best is when you bump into your own feedback that you left like a month earlier. You're like, I don't even remember putting this here, but I guess I did.
Yeah. So wish this was fixable, but it is not. We cannot have a full APAC retro. That's just not. It's not feasible to staff it.
I
The
think
couple...
one point about the retro is about obviously talking about how we can improve, but things about what we did really well in this release, and talking about kind of praising each other. I think that part could go in a meeting that's like doesn't have all the decision makers, but at the same time, how useful it is might be we can just do it async. So I think the point is that we are just completely missing an APAC, which is kind of understandable that they do want some sort of a place to discuss. Perhaps it might be good to have a place just after this retro to take place, and then they can discuss something more. That's how I would feel if I were back in the APAC time zone.
I mean, it's still getting down to like holding a meeting just to read the doc aloud, though. you know, which is super questionable value for me, personally. Viom, you've got your hand up.
Yep. I think Rhoda raised a good point about shoutouts. If they want to personally give shoutouts to people, like physically giving someone a shout out rather than writing it in a doc, I think that has difference. We can do that in the release party.
So we already do that in the release party, and we already do that at the end of the release with everybody posting like public shout out messages in the shout outs channel. So there's already like a ton of that going on, and in the last release meetings before the cycle. So like if y'all want to host a meeting just to like big each other up and talk about how like compliment each other, like you're totally more than welcome to do that. Like please do. But it's not a retro. We're not going to staff like a whole second APAC retro to functionally just read the doc aloud.
Yep, that's fine. I think we should make it more explicit that although it is pretty explicit that you can give shout outs to people in the release party.
It is,
I don't think,
and
yeah.
we're also very open about doing that. I feel like we are constantly bigging each other up at the end of the release, especially during the release party. It's part of the process, but maybe people who are on the team for the first time don't realize that like even a shadow on there for the first time can do that. But you know, I still don't think that this justifies a second APAC retro.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. Wendy, for an issue about code freeze, Wendy thinks that code freeze should be managed on a case-by-case basis by the release lead, as outlined in the handbook. They're the ones who bring together the decision makers and assess the risks of pending PRs. It's not just the release signal team involved. Anyone can be a part of the discussion and can be impacted. Granting a code freeze exception is managed on a case-by-case basis by the release lead. The release lead makes the call on whether or not to allow something, an exception request. Like anybody should be involved in the discussion. The release lead shadow should be involved in the discussion. Stakeholders that would be impacted from various SIGs should be in the discussion. Sub-team leads should be in the discussion, but the call is made by the release lead. That is how it works. It certainly is not just release signal. They're just one part of the discussion. Viom, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think the main point that Wendy has raised here, that the release lead handbook doesn't explicitly say that you need to CC all the sub-team leads.
Well, they don't
And
have to CC all the sub-team leads. It's just something that usually gets done. You just hit the release team.
leads, yeah, that alias, yeah.
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 It's
Yeah.
usually the release team and the cap owners and the leads, the chairs and tech leads from the SIG that owns that cap. That's who gets tagged.
I mean, Wendy
Yeah, I
has a
think
point when she says that it's more like the stability of test grid that could get impacted by a code freeze exception. I think that's the whole thing. Like
Well,
something
then
can.
that's part of the discussion that happens in deciding the riskiness of allowing an exception request. Like that's just a normal part of the process. So I'm just not really clear on what Wendy is looking for here,
yeah, I
because
think
this
Wendy
is how it works.
Yeah, I think Wendy missed out the point that release team leads that alias that has the release signal lead in the group, so they also get directly pinged. The point here was that sub team leads don't get explicitly pinged when an enhanced exception, code freeze exception comes in, and they might want to pitch in that a test has historically flaked a lot or failed a lot, and adding the code changes after the code freeze might be risky. So I think she missed the point of that thing being present already in the release team leads alias.
Yeah, okay. So maybe we can add some clarity to the handbook that specifies you tag those that alias, if it's not already there, but
It's,
that
it's
is what gets
there.
done.
That is
So
already there. The
yeah,
template is already there in the release lead handbook with CC
okay.
release team leads.
Okay, then I think Wendy
Yeah.
just missed the purpose of being tagged here and didn't take an
Mhm.
opportunity to discuss the stability of granting an exception request. Because this is already how it should work and how it does work. So I don't think that there is an action item here. Does anybody disagree?
So to clarify, like code, I think she means code freeze exceptions, right? So the like formal exceptions people have to give for like
Yeah,
kept going in, not the case by case, like we have to fix a bug real quick.
yeah. That is still something that involves discussion from the entire team and any stakeholders. Always has and always will, and is still the release lead's call, ultimately with input from everybody else. So, do we see any action item here? Okay. Next is also Wendy, Viome. Is it possible to finalize the adding missing test grid alert email on several jobs in master blocking and master informing dashboard for release signal team before 134?
Yes, I would get to that this week.
Okay,
So yeah, just that.
perfect. Thank you so much. Next one is you, Viome.
Yeah, this point is majorly around lead shadows being added to the sub-team Slack chat. Um, One thing that I am cautious about is I don't want them to receive notifications on a group regularly that they might not be really working day on day basis on the action items, because it's only when a sub team leads require some help then the sub team release lead shadow steps in to help the sub team
Mhm.
lead. But on the other hand, it is also helpful. For example, there was a case when um, I think the sub team lead asked the shadows if anyone can be present in the meeting or update the notes. The sub team lead wasn't there, and the shadows weren't also there. And in this case, the release lead shadow that was assigned to that sub team didn't know that, hey, no one's coming to the release team meeting. Of course, this is fine. This is just a one off thing. But do we want to do anything about it? Maybe add them to the group and then they can manage the notifications on their own. Like they can mute it, uh, periodically scroll through the chat to see if there's anything that they should be concerned about.
That is at your discretion as the incoming release lead. You can do that if you want to. We didn't actually, this whole assigning release lead shadows to sub team things, that has only been a thing since my release. It's new. So if you want to add them to the chats, by all means, go for it. You're allowed to do that or not. I think they have been in there before. But yeah, that's totally your call. Put them in there if you want. Mateo?
Okay.
I do have something not really against, but like something to point out in this case. Depending on the lead, usually they're already empowered to ask for help. So I would say that it's more like just notification spamming to the release lead shadows. And in case they needed help, like I don't know, Ryota, it was assigned to me. It's really simple to just Slack one message. If you don't ask for help, then the problem is that you don't recognize you have a problem uh, in your sub team. So I don't know. I feel weird about adding the lead shadows to a chat, but maybe it's just me.
I think another point is observation, although that is, I think, covered through the weekly syncs, like how a sub team is performing or if they have anything going wrong internally. But we've had cases when there was a problem within a sub team and that came into our knowledge pretty late in the release that something is wrong with the sub team. And in that case, if there was a lead shadow that previously worked in that team and was following what's happening, let's say in the Slack group chat, and thought that, hey, this is not all right for something like this to happen in, let's say, week 3 of a release, and shadow should know something about how this is being done or how this should be done, then I think that observation can also serve some purpose. The thing about notification spamming, yes, that can be overwhelming, but I think you can just mute it.
Bryce?
Yeah, actually, okay. Like fundamentally, it comes down to the release lead and what they think is best. But I actually agree with Mateo here. Like I think that that group chat is a space created for the lead and their shadows, and I don't want to have the sense that like, you know, they're being like checked on or looked over their shoulder a little bit. There are public spaces where we like check in with the lead, you know, their own channel and our weekly meeting and the lead sync. I think there's lots of avenue to do that. Yeah.
Okay. Rita?
Yeah, I would echo Mateo's point where I think for the team, it would be easier if there is just one person who is responsible for making the final, well, at least in the group chat setup, one person to really be the lead and be the point of contact. And if that lead doesn't know or has some questions about, you know, like we don't exactly know how we can go about it, and that's when we can get the release lead shadow or release leads in pictures in a public channel. So I do not think it is necessary, although I do think that some more interaction between the release lead shadow and also the sub-team shadows perhaps might be useful, because I don't think that was something I saw personally when I was doing shadow. So maybe that's just one more thing. Would be nice to have another point of contact, not just the release lead, sorry, not just the release sub-team leads and also EA, but perhaps the release lead shadow could be another point of contact for asking questions and things if there's nowhere else to ask. But yeah, I think I just want to, I would say that the group being smaller would probably make more sense, at least for my, to my liking.
Okay. Viom, you should take all of this into consideration, and it's your call what you do with this at the beginning of the next cycle.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I would agree with Ryota's point that this should be something that the lead. The basic point is that the shadows should know who is the sub team lead assigned from the release lead shadows. Do you want to
Okay.
make the information public? That's right now private. That happens on the chat with the.
It's fine if that's public. Like I don't see an issue with that.
Fine.
All right. Ryan, making changes to the docs handbook and raising a PR. Great. Let us know when it's open. Do you want an action item to remind you for that?
Yeah, actually.
Okay. Nina, could you assign him an
Yep.
action item for, thank you. Perfect. Okay. And what can we do better? We'll have to be cautious of time because we have 14 minutes before we're running over. First one is Nina.
Yep. So this is kind of combined. There's some conversation in the comms channel that was around like comms responsibility for the blog versus the docs team responsibility. So there was a suggestion kind of related to this about pairing up article authors as buddies to you know, have more reviewers in place. I think ultimately that's not really the comms team responsibility, but if there are things that comms wants to take on, I think this is like a good space to discuss that.
Okay, so reviewing blogs is
Yeah.
part of the comms team's responsibility. They can't approve blogs, but anybody in SIG Docs, any SIG Docs approver can. It doesn't have to be a SIG Docs blog specific approver. So like I can, Natalie can, Ray can, Xander can, we can all approve blogs. But it is comms' responsibility to help with reviewing them. Ryota?
Yeah, so the pairing with buddies have started already for the blog review,
Okay.
as far as I understand. So I think this really helps. Obviously, we can, from the comms side, we can help with the review. But at the same time, if there are so many blogs like this time, it is quite difficult to get everything right, especially based on the timeline. And that, you know, if it's like right now, the timeline is quite tight, and we want all the reviews in place with the SIGs also involved. That's when it is really helpful to have another just completely third-person view from the body. So it's already in place. What we could potentially do better for the comms side is that a bit more clarity on how the comms team also can help with the review. We did more than, as far as I understand, because there are just so many more blogs this time, we did quite a bit from the comms side, but maybe something that we can add to the handbook, saying that that's possibly something that we can do. I think Matteo has something to say about it.
Matteo?
I second what you say, Ryota. I would just say that maybe comms in the first phase of the release, where they don't have a lot to do, they can already start and review some of the blogs not related to the release, just to get accustomed to how to review blogs and stuff like that, so that we also get some more help to SIG docs and maybe familiarize people with the process so that the later blogs are better reviewed. Just maybe.
I hesitate to require the comms team to review blogs that are unrelated to the release cycle. First of all, there's not reliably a backlog of blogs to review. That's not something we can really control or predict. And second of all, it's outside of the release. It's not release comms' job. I don't want to make release comms like functionally a sub-team of SIG docs for the first third of the release. So I would push back against that one. Like, they're welcome to, like, reviewing things like the style guide and looking at how we review things is certainly something that can be added to the comms handbook, but I am not going to make release comms review non-release blogs.
If you don't apply the style guides and stuff, it's very hard to understand how they really are in place in a blog. Like, personally, at least, I found it difficult, and I only learned that the hard way after 180 comments on the first blog that I wrote. So,
Rita?
Yeah, I think I would say it doesn't have, the handbook doesn't say, talk about how to actually go about the blog review. So maybe earlier in the process, we can have a bit of a quick kind of comms knowledge share where the lead can kind of share how the blog review should happen. Maybe not like specifically for actual blogs in the SIG docs blog space, maybe something that we did in the past previous releases, and then we can just see the comments from the pull request. I think that would be helpful, because I did see that myself, that I got into the feature blog review and I wasn't really sure how to go about it. Like, what does looks good to me label really mean? How is it different from approval? So those are the things that may be helpful to have more clarity in the documentation. Also, some knowledge share beforehand.
You can do that in the sub-team onboarding.
Yeah, I think that's something that I would suggest.
Okay.
And I will have an action item for that to clarify that in the handbook.
Great, thank you. Next one is Matteo.
just very short, trying to get rid of tribal knowledge in branch management, and I'm trying to document every single step, at least regarding the release cuts relevant to the release.
Okay.
That's it.
Great, thank you. Nina, next 2 are yours.
It's very quick. Maybe this is another comms handbook update. I think it's okay for the CNCF webinar not to be an actual link, but we should, maybe document that in the handbook or think of a way to make sure it's up before we publish the blog.
So it usually is. They screwed that up this cycle.
I think Matteo...
And the one before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah, that's historically not a problem. So that's a thing that I will keep an eye on next cycle to make sure that when the comms lead reaches out to the CNCF to get that webinar link, that they actually do hand it over quickly, because it does not usually happen like that.
Okay, perfect. Then I don't think we need an action item, just unless you want one, but just keep an eye out.
It's okay. That's just a thing I'll keep an eye on.
Cool. And the next one's also me. I think we talked about this at the release party, but these are the updates that I want to make for the release day checklist. So I'll have a PR up if there's anything else people want to add that's like changed recently, either comment on the PR or add a comment in this doc. But I'm in the process of updating this to reflect the actual date, like release day checklist. So
okay, great, thank you. Because yeah, it is a little bit out of date. Ryota, add documentation about the release number should be prefixed with V. Yeah, I will put that back because it used to be there and somebody reverted it. But it absolutely, we do in blogs and documentation, it is prefixed with a V. So I'll take an action item to put that back and defend that PR with gusto.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. The rest of them are yours.
Yeah, so quickly, so the announcements channel wasn't used too much. I think the last one was like 128 or 3, can't remember. So you just needed a bit of a quick check with the Slack admin to get the access to be able to send a message to announcements, and that should be part of the release day, probably runbook or handbook in the comms side. So that's something I would be putting in the handbook.
I think that's a reasonable ask. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one. And the next one is what is it? Go to place feature. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out I think great. Links. Oh, right. This is just an idea that I had. If the KEP has a feature blog, it might be nice to have the links to the feature blogs in the release announcement. And obviously, but at the time the release announcement goes out, the links are not there, the feature blogs aren't there. But maybe that's something that we can retrospectively update the release announcement later so that anyone who's trying to figure out what the 133 or 134 release is about, they can come back to the release announcement blog and then find all the feature blogs. That may be just one way to kind of consolidate all the feature blogs. Perhaps that's already clear from the title, if you can prefix with 133 perhaps, but just a thought that might be worth having discussion for.
I'm not opposed to it aside from the bloat and load on SIG Docs approvers of opening like potentially a dozen more PRs to go edit the release blog. So if we do that, I would prefer that it would be in like 1 or 2 batches once all of the release blogs are done being published. And I think that you should bring that to a SIG Docs meeting to talk about because that impacts us and doesn't impact SIG Release.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'll discuss that with the SIG Docs.
Yeah.
And probably what I would suggest is just having one PR at the end of the feature blogs, and then we just put all the links back in there. Okay. So that was one.
Yeah.
And the next one is the feature blog schedule. There was a discussion that it should be done a little bit earlier, and it's actually not done yet. So if we can get it done, the write-ups to be done and all the drafts to be merged, and then we can have the schedule clearly shared with the SIG Docs a little bit earlier. I think that would help. Obviously, it would help if we can get that. I don't think this is actually feasible to get all the write-ups done before the release day, and it's not yet done for the 133. So just one thing that I wanted to bring up. Another bit is if we can get the merged drafts shared with the localization team, that would help them to have the localization articles with the announcement and also the feature blogs. So that was something that was suggested or requested from the SIG Docs. So maybe worth just a quick mention in the handbook. So I'll probably do that.
Yeah, that can go in the handbook. For getting the feature blogs like done before the release, I don't think that that's feasible because it requires wrangling contributors from other SIGs who are also very busy. So I don't know if we can get the whole thing like merged before the release day, but we can certainly push towards like having it done earlier rather than later. It does stress me out seeing feature blogs unmerged like 3 days before they're supposed to be public. So I hear you.
Yeah. And last one is about the tagging of SIG release will be helpful for the blog and probably docs and just anything. And that the reason was that we missed some of the blogs that were actually open from the previous cycle, and that was kind of kept on hold and the placeholder, and then it was reopened or repurposed to go for the current release. And then we only found out after going through all the blog PRs, and then okay, this was something that the author actually updated before the deadline time. So it is something that we might be able to just say the SIG release is the label that we need to have in the PR. That way we can track it a little bit easier. Just a thought to update.
Sure. Yeah, we got a SIG
So-
release label to the blogs.
Yeah,
You
so
should
I'll
own
probably do
that
that
action
in the,
item. Because that seems like it's like a new label to add, right?
that label is actually there, and I
it's
tried
already
it,
there.
and
Yeah, it's there. We just don't use it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we
So
should
it's probably
update
just
the handbook as well for docs and comms.
Yeah.
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. We've got 1 minute left. Does anybody have anything else?
I think we have one unassigned action item for looking into the automation for checking user-facing code changes merging in. This is like related to the first enhancements discussion we had.
Oh, that was
We-
Viom was going to look
Viom.
into the feasibility of that.
I was gonna
Yeah.
volunteer Viom anyway, so
Oh, you take it.
I'll maybe look into it briefly, but
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Sweet. Good job, everybody. We'll see most of you in the next one. Well, by that I mean the next cycle. There's not another retro. Any parting words from anybody before I close this meeting?
Yeah, great job, everyone. I think this is one for the books, as Grace said.
Yeah, this was a good
So-
cycle. It was very good. So great
right.
job.
See everyone.
All right. I'm stopping the recording then.
Bye bye. Cheers.